When you have a thought that keeps going over and over in your brain, when you're ruminating and that inner critic is beating you up, often we believe it. All of these things that we think we should have done to make the situation better. Newsflash, none of that matters. There's nothing you could have done. What you have to do is understand that the thoughts you're having are not a real story. It's your survival mechanism that's concerned that you're not safe. Hey friend, welcome back to the Art of Managing Your Brain podcast. I am Dr. Charlie Hornes, and today we're tackling a powerful force that shapes how we see ourselves and what we believe we're capable of, the inner critic. That's right, our inner critic that is always on loop in our head. It is time to get rid of that sucker. If you've ever felt a relentless voice saying that you're not enough, that maybe you don't belong, or that you're just not cut out for this, know that you're not alone. Today, we're going to unravel what's behind that voice and how you can start shifting your inner narrative to support rather than hinder your goals.
I'm Dr. Charlie Hornes, highly anxious people pleaser turned master certified professional life coach. Learning to manage my brain was so life-changing for me that I got certified so that I could teach these incredible evidence-based practices to you. Are you ready for massive change? Let's go.
Before we dive in, I want to ask you for a quick favor. If you've been finding value in these podcasts, could you take a moment to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform? Your reviews help me reach more listeners just like you, people who are ready to elevate their lives and careers through thought work and mind management. Leaving a review takes only a minute, and it makes a huge impact on anonymous people you don't even know that you're helping. And if there's somebody that you know that could benefit from today's episode or our show in general, please go ahead and share it with them. Whether it's a colleague, a friend, a family member, a simple share could be the first step in transforming their approach to life's challenges. And of course, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and download so you never miss an episode. I'm here every week with new insights to keep you growing and thriving. Now, I'm thrilled to share something exciting. Right now, during the holidays, I'm running a special flash sale on my masterclass bundle. These are my two most powerful and popular masterclasses, and I'm bundling them together just for you at a very special price. You're going to get this bundle for $47. Usually I charge $197 for both. You're going to get the Confidence Mastery and the Resilience Mastery masterclasses. If you're ready to dive deeper into this work we're discussing here, these classes are designed to give you a transformative, practical foundation. In my first course, it is perfect for today, Rewiring Your Inner Dialogue. In this course, we're going to tackle internal challenges like self-doubt and overthinking, equipping you with tools to make confident, empowered decisions without second-guessing yourself, and kicking that inner critic annoying pest to the curb. And in my second masterclass, this one I've titled Rewire Your Auto-Emotional Reactivity. We're going to go even further by addressing external challenges, how to handle difficult people and situations with calm and clarity so you're no longer feeling reactive to what's going on around you. This bundle is designed to set you up for success as you head into the new year. You can grab both classes, normally $197. I'm offering just for you for $47 at charliehornescoaching.com/flash sale. Hurry. This is a holiday limited time offer. And if you're wondering which of these two pathways might be the better fit for you, I've created a quick and insightful quiz. It's called the Thought Saboteur Quiz, and it's designed to help you uncover the specific thought pattern that's trapping you and holding you back from your success. Once you get your results, I'll share some personal steps to help you address those patterns and give you a taste of the transformation waiting for you inside this masterclass bundle holiday special. Take the quiz at charliehornescoaching.com/quiz and discover what's really blocking your growth. It's completely free, and it's a great way to start making shifts right now. Okay, so welcome back. So a lot of the time we're focusing in this show on male-dominated spaces and women leaders that are leading in them. But there's so many things women leaders are struggling with, so many things we don't even know we're struggling with that just feel awful. Often in male-dominated spaces, this inner critic that women leaders deal with can feel especially persistent, almost as if it's there to keep you in line or hold you back. And here's the truth. That voice is not an objective reality. It's a story. It's exactly what it sounds like, an inner narrative. It's a tape on loop in your head. And at any time, I'm going to date myself, change the cassette, pop it out of there and put on a new mixtape, right? Those of you that are following me, you know what I'm talking about. It's a story. It's an inner narrative. And it's one that you have the power to change. By the end of this episode, you'll understand what drives this inner narrative, how to identify it, and steps to start rewriting it in a way that empowers you. All right, so let's start by redefining what we call the inner critic. So think of it as an outdated inner narrative, a story that your brain's developed to keep you safe and prepared. This voice often tells us that we're not enough, or get this, we're too much, or we're never going to measure up. This is the voice that keeps us in these untenable, absolutely contradictory expectations that, as we spoke about last week, are based in nothing. This isn't just self-doubt. It's not. This is an identity that we build over time through our experiences and the messages that we receive. These are the messages that we have been told our entire lives, the stories that we've been raised in, our family narratives. Sometimes it's that trauma DNA that is passed down from generation to generation. It is societal expectations, and it is patriarchal socialization. Our brains are wired to create these narratives to help us make sense of the world. That's what they are. These narratives are our brains that have been wired to create them to help us make sense of the world. From a very young age, we start constructing these stories about who we are based on feedback from those around us, our parents, our teachers, society. And when we kind of grow up and end up in male-dominated environments like most women leaders are, this can be particularly harsh. The narrative that forms might tell you that being assertive is just too much. Like, people can't handle you. They can't take you. We hear the joke about a little girl that is super bossy, and we've started to now tell her that she's going to be a CEO, and we need to encourage that, teach her to be kind. But that's important. We're changing some of these social narratives now for our younger women. But right now, most of us get in that place of contradictory expectations and contradictory messaging that we're not enough or we're too much. So this narrative, this story that has been created by all of these belief systems and thoughts and ideas and cultural normatives, they've all been thrown in this pot, and they've been brewed and stewed into what's in your brain now. And basically, it's just sitting there in that pot, and it's, bubbling up. And then every so often it spits stuff at you, when that big bubble comes up, and then all of a sudden, boom, here's an idea. Here's a thought. Here's part of your narrative. Here's your inner dialogue. The narratives that form might tell you things that are not true. And that any mistake that you make will confirm that you're out of place. So it's almost like your narrative, your inner narrative, your dialogue that you have with yourself that's running on loop, that cassette tape in your brain. It's in cahoots with imposter syndrome. Yeah. So here's what's important about this inner narrative. It's not true. That's the key takeaway today, friends. Your inner narrative, your inner dialogue, the voice on loop in your head, it's simply a story. It's a story that's been influenced by a mix of external feedback and your brain's attempt to protect you from perceived threats. So here's a little thought work exercise, since that's what I teach. Here's a grounding thought. Whenever your inner critic shows up, whenever you catch that loop going over and over in your brain, that's like beating you up. It doesn't stop. It keeps going. It keeps playing. Say to yourself, this is just one version of my story, and I have the power to choose another one. Now, I can tell you all day long, well, just stop thinking that. Stop, change your thoughts. Have different words in your head. Right. If I just say that to you, it means nothing to you because we don't have control over the inner dialogue in our brains. And this is what my masterclass is going to get into in much more detail. I have 3 very simple steps that will help you rewrite this narrative. But here's a couple of things you can take away today. If I tell you just to stop thinking something, your brain doesn't know how to do that because your brain is working automatically. It is taking control. It has the driver's seat and it's speeding down the road at 8,000 miles an hour. And then I'm asking you to just abruptly stop. Like, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And your brain doesn't want to do it anyway because it doesn't feel safe. But when you understand why your brain is running these thoughts over and over again in your head, when you understand the why, the how, and why it's important, then that's that step of getting underneath something to like root it out. And then that's that step of getting into that aerial view, of getting above the storm system and being able to look down from the airplane and see the swirling around you. Now you can see how it works, why it works, and you can become a witness to it rather than being within it and getting pummeled to death, right? When you have a thought that keeps going over and over in your brain, when you're ruminating and that inner critic is beating you up, often we believe it. See, that's the trick. Often we believe what the thought is saying. I'm a piece of crap. I'm this. I can't do it right. Why didn't I say this? The shoulda, coulda, wouldas, right? Like, if only I'd said the right thing. If only I did the right thing. If only I, paused or got up or left all of these things that we think we should have done to make the situation better. Newsflash. None of that matters. There's nothing you could have done. There's nothing you should have done. And there's nothing that would have been like the perfect thing. You don't have to do any of those things. What you have to do is understand that the thoughts you're having are not a real story. They're not real. And it's your survival mechanism that's concerned that you're not safe. So how does the survival brain play into our inner critic and this dialogue that plays on loop in our brains over and over and over again? Like just kicking the crap out of us constantly, telling us every little bit of things that are wrong with us, how we didn't get it right, how we should have this, could have that, everything I just mentioned. The reason it does that is because it's trying to always keep you safe, but it wants you prepared for the worst case scenario. That is how our brains keep us from awful things happening. Yeah, that's how it works. It's like our brain is the greatest catastrophic thinker ever. Our brain is constantly looking for the worst case scenarios and then preparing. Our brain is like, it's like a prepper, right? Your brain is like that on steroids, constantly looking, constantly imagining worst case scenarios. And it's different for everybody. Some people are going to be a little more extreme. Some people, not so much. There's so many factors, again, that go into this. Our DNA, how we were raised, our story, what we believe, hormonal levels and our neurotransmitters. It's just so many different things that go into this. So some of us are predisposed to be more catastrophic than others. And then there's the disposition, your Enneagram, which I'm a huge believer in. Talk to me offline about that. I'm a 6, by the way. So I know about catastrophic thinking and an inner critic. So I'm a professional at talking about this one. It's terrible. Our brain is like constantly on high alert. The alarm is always going off. And so your brain's constantly reminding you. It's constantly telling you when it believes that you've put it in danger, when it believes you're not safe. And the other thing about why the rumination happens the over and over again is that's your brain wiring that pathway to remember not to do whatever the dumb thing is that it's decided subjectively wasn't the right thing to do. Based in what? How does it know? Because our brains, again, only see the world through our own story. It's not objective. It's not an objective truth. Back to what is a real fact. What can be proven in a court of law? Your brain cannot prove in a court of law that it didn't like the tone that you used, or if only you'd said this thing instead of that thing. Like, none of that matters, especially when you get above this stuff and you start to see the system for what it is, that aerial view that I talk about all the time. When you start to see that, none of the shoulda, coulda, woulda matters. How much you're letting your brain put importance on certain things that you have the power to stop putting importance on, because they're not objective. It's subjective. Absolutely subjective. So once you start to realize that your inner critic, it's just a story, a subjective story, and it's not the truth, you can start to begin to take control of the narrative. Again, this is the why. If you don't understand the why these things are happening, that it's science, biology, neurology, that it's happening for reasons, primitive brain survival mechanisms, again, chemicals in your brain, your disposition and how you were raised, plus all of the, socialized expectations that we've been raised in. Once you understand most of it has nothing to do with you, that you don't have to sit around and beat yourself up that you did something wrong. Because look, when we get into the bigger picture, back to the aerial view, when you start to see saying the right thing or having the right comeback is probably not going to change anything. Actually, it's probably going to make it worse, because then you're, a smart ass that, told somebody off and now you've made an enemy, instead of having an opportunity to have a conversation and figure out why somebody may be criticizing, or, why their brain thinks that you're, a weak link in the, in the tribal herd mentality of protection, when you're not, because their brains are also entirely upside down and identifying things that don't matter today. And so once you understand the narrative running in your head, especially the negative stuff, is simply a survival mechanism. It's preparing you for worst case scenarios so that, you don't drive off a cliff or, Thelma and Louise it or whatever. So it's learning the separation. It's the self-differentiation between who you are, whose you are, the great creator who created you and made you perfect just as you are, self-differentiating who you are, and the narrative in your head that is mainly projections from your brain's made up crap. These things that are going over and over in your brain, this dialogue that's beating you up, that's telling you everything wrong with you, That is entirely normal for your survival brain. And it's got nothing to do with you. And it happens to everybody on different scales. Now, all of those things go into it, different stories and whatever. But it's not about you. And you've got to get in the plane with me and get up on that aerial view. And you've got to begin to see that. Okay, now let's explore this inner narrative and how it actually shapes who you believe that you are. Because the mistake most of us make our entire lives is that we believe the thought in our brains. We believe the story our survival brain is telling us. We believe everything our survival brain tells us that's wrong with us so that we will be prepared and safe. And we won't be seen as, quote, the weak link in the herd mentality, which doesn't apply to today. You know, I don't care if the accountant thinks I'm a weak link because their survival brain doesn't like that I, made a mistake in a number or whatever. Fix it. Fine. No problem. Doesn't have to be the narrative of my life, that everything is wrong. It's not. You're okay. And at any time, you can tell that narrative to kick rocks. Because it's not true. Think of it this way. Every time you tell yourself a story about who you are and what you're capable of, you reinforce the identity. You reinforce the story. Every time you question if it's true, are you a piece of crap? Are you this? Did you screw that up? Are you no good? Blah, blah, blah. Every time you allow that story to be told in your brain, you are literally reinforcing the neural pathways that will convince you it's true. It's not. But the more you allow it, the more neural pathways you build that begin to kind of, solidify into that reality that you think is true. For instance, if you frequently think, I'm just not confident as everybody else. Well, if that's what you're thinking, that narrative becomes part of how you see yourself. It's like creating the reflection in the funhouse mirror. If that's the only mirror you look in, you're going to have a distorted view. And even then, when we look in a mirror, we see ourselves backwards. Everybody else sees us the opposite way. Our face is opposite to everybody else. So we look different, honestly. Who was I listening to? Maybe it's a podcast. I don't know. If you heard this, let me know. Put it in the comments because I have no idea who said this. They said that they gave pictures to people that you knew and to you. One of the picture taken if you're looking in the mirror and one of the same angle of someone looking at you. So it's two pictures of your face, but one is reversed, depending on who's looking at it. And then they were asked, which one picture do you like better? Like, which one are you more favored in? And the person always chose the one that resembled the picture they see in the mirror. And the people that know them and see them always pick the one that looks like when they look at them, the same angle and perspective. That's because that's what our brains are used to. That's what we've always seen. And anything else looks weird, bizarre, doesn't make sense, doesn't fit, whatever, stands out. Puts our brains on high alert. Who's that person? So it is a perspective issue is what it is. So the more you stare into that funhouse mirror and you've never seen, a flat regular mirror, the more you believe that's what you look like. And the more you stare into a regular mirror, you're never going to see yourself as other people see you. So it's all subjective. Your brain being efficient will repeat the story over and over again, reinforcing it as who you are. Your brain likes things simple. Let's go back to that motivational triad that one of my coaches teaches. The first piece of that triad is that your brain is constantly looking for safety, which means things that feel good have created a neural pathway in our brains that is safe. Your brain is constantly looking for not being dead. So it's constantly trying to stay out of harm's way. The third thing is that your brain wants to expel the least amount of energy possible because it's ready to run away so that it's not dead. That's your motivational triad. That's what motivates your brain. And so changing narratives, not going with the most simple, terrible, most catastrophic thinking, most prepping perspective to keep you safe takes too much energy to think it through, to create logic. And especially today when our survival mechanism is entirely upside down to our entire lives, it takes too much time and energy for your survival brain to figure it out. It would rather just call you a loser because maybe you won't leave the house then and you can't get hit by a bus. Do you see how that works? If you think terrible thoughts about yourself, you'll stay in the cave, you won't go out, and you won't get eaten by a tiger. Never not be afraid. Who knows that quote? Put it in the comments. Never not be afraid. That's your brain. That movie, that's your brain. All right. But here's the thing. These narratives, they are not absolute truths. They're not. Now, one of my favorite topics, neuroplasticity. Research shows that in neuroplasticity, our brains are adaptable, which is the coolest thing. Brains are so cool. I'm just obsessed with them. We can create these new pathways and change our habitual thoughts at any time. So you have a narrative, this inner critic that has been telling you a story your entire life. Think about it. What story have you been telling yourself your entire life? I can think of a few that have been clinging to my brain since I can remember being conscious. Where did they come from? I don't really know. Some of them I know. Some of them I have no idea where they came from. What have you been telling yourself your whole life? Because that is the pathway that you have created. And that is your go-to belief system about yourself. Could be a bunch of stuff. Could be just a couple of things that have stuck with you for a long time. But that is your habitual thought about yourself. Those are your pathways. And the good news is your brain is adaptable, which means the more you tell yourself a different, more positive story, something that serves you better, the easier it is to rewire that pathway. So when the School of Thought work that I teach and my coaches teach, when we talk about rewiring your brain, we're literally talking about rewiring your brain to think different thoughts, to change the old habitual thoughts that you now discover when you get into plane with me and you get up to that aerial view and you see the storm system for what it is. You see the socialized patriarchy. You see the habitual thoughts you've been telling yourself. You see how ridiculous your survival brain is because of all of the things it's trying to do to keep you in the cave so you don't go out and enjoy your life, so you don't get hit by a bus. Never not be afraid. That's what is driving the entire narrative that you're basing your entire life on and your entire self-worth, your value, your painting of yourself, of who you believe you are, who you think you are. Is that really what you want to think about yourself? Maybe you need to pause and write down some of these habitual thoughts that you've had your whole life that have been running through your brain. Like that mixtape from, the old boyfriend that you kicked to the curb because they were a jerk. You just can't let it go. Let it go. What this means is that your narrative is not set in stone. It can evolve as your thoughts evolve. In fact, people with similar circumstances can have vastly different outcomes simply because of what it is that they tell themselves in their brains, what they've told themselves their entire lives, and what it is that they choose to actually believe about those habitual thoughts. Two people can have the exact same experience, the exact same job. They can face the exact same challenges, but one of them might think this challenge is teaching me growth. This challenge is making me a better person, a stronger person, a more resilient person. While another person can believe entirely different, that this challenge means I'm failing. This challenge means I'm not good enough. That's how it kind of marries into the imposter syndrome piece. I don't belong here. I shouldn't be here. I should go back in my cave and not get hit by a bus. Do you see that? Are you tracking me here? No, it doesn't mean you're a failure. Absolutely not. That's just made up words in your head. What's the difference? The difference is the inner narrative that the person has, quote, chosen. Now, most people, before they learned the thought work and they learned the adaptability of our brains and our habitual thoughts, before they learn these things, that these things can be changed, they believe them. All of us do. Most of us do. Most of us just by default believe our thought. Our first thought that comes through our brains, we believe it. It just is what it is, right? Once you understand that all of those thoughts are not real and they're habitual because you've been telling yourself them your whole life, they've become your story and you've just believed it. Once you get that, you can begin to change the narrative, because that's a narrative ultimately you have chosen. Yes, maybe you didn't have control, but now that you know, you have control to change what you've chosen to tell yourself over and over again. So think about a recurring story that you tell yourself about your abilities or your place in your work environment. Maybe it's, I'm not good enough, or I'll never fit in here, or why did they hire me? I don't belong here. Imposter. Recognizing this as a narrative, as a story, recognizing it as not true. That's the key. You have the power to change it at any time. You can change your inner dialogue at any time. Yeah, let's get specific about how you can start identifying and challenging these inner narratives. So one way to do this is by observing your self-talk, especially the I am statements. And again, we're going to go back to how it feels in our body because, like I say 1,000 times, we don't feel our thoughts. We don't feel our actions. We don't feel our circumstances. We feel our feelings, right? From pain and pressure in our bodies to feeling awful about ourselves and feeling yuck in our stomach and just all this stuff. We feel what we think. So we always start with the somatic practices of where in my body am I feeling this? And what am I thinking causing the feeling? So it is identifying the I am statements. I am this. I am that. If only I this. The shoulda, coulda, wouldas. All of those phrases like, I'm not good enough with numbers. I love my coach, Carol Lowenthal. She talks about women are socialized to believe that they're terrible with money. We're taught that. Society teaches women that we're terrible with money and we shouldn't have it. That's ridiculous because, again, as I've talked about the, free domestic labor that most women do, they're running households. They're running budgets. Most women in leadership, many I'm talking to right now, have huge budgets, are CFOs and, all kinds of amazing things. But we're taught socially that we're not good with numbers, that we're not good with money. And so many women are raised to believe that. It's just a narrative. What about I'm not a natural leader? See, these phrases, they sound in our brains like they're facts. And the way they come across, the way that our survival brain spits them at us out of that boiling and harmful, bubbling pot of awfulness, they sound like they're real because they feel real. But they're often just stories you're repeated so many times that they just feel true. And they're familiar. Sometimes they're comfortable. So here's where you can apply some thought work. Every time you notice a limiting I am statement that is, you just caught it running over and over in your brain, right? It's one of those things you can just like catch and pull out of the air. Challenge the thought by asking, is it true? Is it actually factually can be proven in a court of law true? Or is it just a story that I've been telling myself? Is it comfortable? Does it fit? Even if it doesn't feel good, sometimes, what is it? The devil we know? Yeah. Sometimes our thoughts are like that. For example, if your inner narrative says, I'm not confident, you could reframe it as I'm learning to grow my confidence every day. The shift, it doesn't deny your current experience. It doesn't deny your feelings. It doesn't try to make you believe things you don't believe, but it does open the door for growth and for a new and different narrative you can begin to tell yourself. So the greatest thing you can do for yourself right now is when you catch the thought that's over and over, especially the familiar ones, especially the ones you've been telling yourself your whole life. When you catch them, identify what the thought is. And then remember that your identity is not set in stone. These are collections of stories that you have accepted about yourself, that you have told yourself, that you have believed about yourself over time. One beautiful question to ask yourself is, where did I learn this? Did someone else tell me this? Did somebody tell me this my whole life? To the point where I question myself and I believe their words. Did society impress this on me? Am I imprinted by socialized patriarchy and socialized expectations? Where did this come from? Where did the thought about yourself that is negative come from, that you seem to entertain over and over and over again in your mind? And why do you continue to entertain it? Is that what you want to believe about yourself? By identifying these I am statements and reframing them into something that better serves you, you start to literally rewrite the narrative that is running in your brain. And you can rewrite the narrative into something that serves you better, that empowers you to feel better about yourself. All right, so let's talk about how you can intentionally create a new and empowering narrative. So imagine you're writing a story about your life, one where you're the main character and you get to decide how you show up. What qualities do you want to embody? Who do you want to be? Who do you imagine for your future self? Who is the future self you've always wanted to meet? Who is that person? And then what can you do now to secure becoming that person that you've always wanted to be? How can you take care of your future self so that when you meet her, you can hand it off and say, I did my best to take care of you? What do you want your life and your career to be about? How do you want to think about yourself? Write your story. And when you start going down those negative rabbit trails, remember, it's your brain trying to stuff you in the cave. So this is where the concept of a thesis statement for your life comes in. This is something I learned, and it was so powerful when I did this work for myself. Because again, I'm telling you everything I've done for me. This is what changed my life. This is why I studied it in my doctorate work. This is why I'm certified to teach it. It changed my life in ways that years of therapy really didn't have any impact with. This changed my life in weeks. I created a powerful I am thesis statement that began to anchor a new narrative for me about who I believed I was, not who I was told I was, not who I would be meeting external expectations, not who I felt I was when I was in the midst of the vice of unreasonable expectations that society has women, primarily in leadership, primarily in male dominated fields, dancing attuned to. What is your new thesis statement about your life? What thought makes you feel better? For example, instead of I'm just not good enough, try something like I'm resilient and capable. I'm learning from every challenge I face. I have achieved difficult stuff. I can do it again. Yes, I made mistakes. I also learned fantastic things from them. Bring it on. You don't like my mistakes? Oh, well, show me your perfection. New narratives are going to serve as a grounding force for a new perspective on how we see the world, on how we see our lives. It starts with our inner narrative, our inner dialogue. We do not have to listen to our inner critic. Number one, it's outdated, right? We can get out of the cave now. Number two, we don't need to be prepping all the time. We don't need to be prepared for the absolute worst catastrophic thing in the world where, things happen. But, in our society, Western society, where we are right now, most of the time, it's pretty safe. The narratives do not serve us anymore. So whenever you hear that inner critic creeping in, return to your I am thesis. Write the I am thesis dedicated to the future you cannot wait to meet. The future you cannot wait to hand that baton off to and say, I did my work for you. You're here. I have brought you into fruition. I have smashed all of the terrible thoughts that I was raised to believe. I have rewritten them. I have rewired my brain to believe different things. And over time, this shift in your narrative strengthens your own self-image and it empowers you to move forward, especially in challenging environments. See, this is the work that allows you to not be fazed when crap starts falling down around you, when, people are criticizing, when things are tough, when there's conflict that you have to begin to address calmly. It's because the things that you've told yourself your whole life, I'm not good at conflict, I'm afraid of conflict. You're not afraid of conflict. You're afraid of how it feels when people get loud around you. And that comes from somewhere. And that's also a narrative you've told yourself. How many times have you told yourself, for example, I'm conflict averse. I don't like conflict. I'm not good at conflict. None of that's true. You can be good at conflict at any time that you choose to be. Because you don't have to have the same thoughts you've always told yourself when there's conflict around you. And you don't have to believe the thoughts of other people and their opinions about you and the stuff that's based in nothing. Who cares what they think? Not because I'm telling you don't care what people think. That's impossible. What I'm saying is, who cares because their thoughts are not actually real. They're based in nothing. You don't have to care about them. It's really sad when you see people that don't understand that what they think about other people isn't real. But 99% of us believe the narratives in our brains. We believe what the awful things we say about ourselves, but we also believe the awful things our brain says about other people. That's where the power is. All right, so write down your current narrative. Write it down in one statement. You get one sentence. Write down what this story that you've been told in your brain about yourself, what is it? And then I want you to rewrite it as a positive I am statement. I want you to write it as a manifesto to your future self. I want you to write it as a love letter to your future self. Who is it you want to be? Who is it your future self wants you to be? Who are you? What thesis statement in your life serves you? What brings you joy? What takes the yucky feeling out of your body as you do this somatic work and you identify yucky feelings and the thoughts that create them? What would you rather feel? And then what thought could you think to create that feeling? And that's your statement. That is your love letter to your future self. That is kicking the inner narrative and the inner critic to the curb. Get out. Get out with your nonsense. So for example, if your current narrative is, I'm constantly overlooked. Okay, rewrite it as, I'm worthy of recognition and I bring unique values to my team. I'm going to be heard. If you don't like it, kick rocks with my inner critic over there. Go sit in the corner with them. It's going to take a lot of work, trust me, until you have that mind shift, until you do the work. You really have to work with somebody to do this stuff. But when you have this mind shift, it changes everything. So put your love letter to yourself, your statement, your thesis statement to your future self, somewhere you can see it every day. And let it remind you that you have control over your own story. You have control over your inner narrative. You don't have to think the thoughts you've been thinking your whole life about who you are. You don't have to have all of the self-doubt and all of the criticism. I mean, it's on tape, on loop, in your brain, and it doesn't stop unless you rewrite it. So thought work isn't a one-time fix. It is an ongoing practice of noticing, of challenging, of questioning, and of reframing those thoughts on loop in your head. And as you continue, you are going to notice that that inner critic's voice, it starts to get a little bit quieter. And you're going to notice that that new story that you have been working so hard to create, to write, to live into, to believe, that new story is going to grow louder and stronger. This practice isn't about denying challenges. It's not about lying to yourself. It's not about make-believe. It's about rather choosing the perspective that is going to serve you best in your life, that is going to match you best and bridge the gap between who you are now and the future self you've always wanted to be. What are the thoughts that will get you there? What is the narrative that will get you there? What is the story that will get you there? What are the thoughts that will get you there? What is your life's thesis statement that will get you there? Because you deserve to be that future self you've always wanted to be. The only thing standing in your way is that you believe the thoughts in your head. You don't have to do that anymore. And that's something you can start today. Start practicing it today. And each time you catch yourself falling into this old story, pause and ask, is this the narrative I want to continue? Is this what I want to think about myself? Does this serve me? Or am I ready to rewrite a new one right now? Oh, there's a dumb thought. Thanks, brain. Thanks for trying to keep me in the cave. But you know what? It's almost 2025. I think I'm safe from saber-toothed tigers. So back off with your nonsense and prepper ridiculousness over there. Okay. I'm going to step out and enjoy the sun for a hot minute. Okay. Because over time, you're going to find that you naturally start choosing narratives that align with your goals, your strengths, your values, and your true potential. And eventually, the narratives that you choose are going to align perfectly with the future self you've always wanted to become. Because one day, as you do this work, you will wake up and be her. And you'll hand off that baton and she'll thank you for it. So reclaiming your inner narrative is one of the most powerful things you can do. It's very simple. It is not easy. I recommend help. If you need a coach, apply. I may be a good match for you. You're not defined by your past. You're not defined by your past experiences or the stories that others have told you. You're not defined by the socialization. You're not defined by the roles that society tells you you should live into. You're not defined by the unreasonable expectations that most of the time women, especially in leadership, especially women in leadership in male-dominated fields, will never live into because they're impossible. And the goal line's always moving, right? You're not defined by any of these things that you have been told. You've told yourself or the world has told you. You're defined by the narrative that you choose to embrace right now. And each day is an opportunity to decide, who do you want to be? So get started writing that love letter to your future self. And friends, if today's episode resonates with you, please consider sharing it with somebody who might need to hear this message. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And also by subscribing, remember that you are committing to your journey of growth and resilience. And together we're going to continue to build this community of empowered and fierce women who are equipped to go out there and just take over. So I really hope that you will subscribe and consider leaving a review and a comment and engage. I'd really love that. Okay, so as we wrap up, I want you to remember the inner narrative, the inner critic, the voice that is running rampant in your brain is not the truth. It's just a survival instinct. It's helping you understand that you can self-differentiate from its power because it doesn't have to have any power if you don't give it. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. And I really hope that you will review and share and subscribe. And also remember, you can grab my quiz at charliehornetscoaching.com/quiz and grab my holiday masterclass bundle at charliehornetscoaching.com/flash sale. That's charliehornetscoaching.com/flash sale. And I will be back next week with more tools and insights to empower you to navigate life's challenges with grace and clarity and confidence. And until then, keep managing your mind and remembering that you're not alone in this journey. All right. I'll see you next time. Have a great week. Bye.